Campaign 2020 is sponsored by Wisconsin Hospital Association, Quick Trip, Wisconsin Counties Association, Wisconsin Realtors Association, and Wisconsin Operating Engineers Local 139.
Luke Dretske of Berlin is a Republican candidate in the 41st Assembly District. The primary is August 11th. Luke, welcome to WisconsinEye.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
You know, when I read about your campaign online, one of your issues is term limits. If you were elected, how many years, how many terms would you serve in the Assembly?
Yeah, that's a question that I have yet to be asked, surprisingly, given that, I am young, right? So people would think, oh, maybe he's going to be in there for 50 years, which I do not want to be at all. But yeah, no, I'm not quite sure. I know I want to get a lot of stuff done. And, as long as I can get all my stuff done that I want to do, I don't want to be in there that long. I mean, I want to be able to set my future up with how this, with new programs or do this restructuring, some laws and the budget. So then when I get out, I'll have, the necessary materials for my family and other families to be able to raise, kids and send them to good schools in the district. And I mean, once I can meet those priorities and try to get that done, I mean, then I'll probably step away because I finished my job. I did what I wanted to do and I'll get out. So I'm not quite sure when that will be. I mean, hopefully, the sooner the better, but who knows in politics, right?
Okay, so you haven't set a specific number of terms or years that you would serve, correct?
I'm not quite sure, and I don't want to. I mean, like I said, I'm 21, and I don't want to be in there for half my life. Definitely don't want to be in there till I'm 50 or 60. I think I want to get out and maybe try doing some other stuff like my free time.
I understand. Okay, let's move to some traditional questions. The governor has warned that because of the pandemic, Luke, tax collections could fall by $2 billion in this current fiscal year. If you're in the Assembly, the choices are simple. Do you cut spending or do you raise taxes or fees? Your position?
Yeah, I think right away, initially, I'd say we have to try to cut spending just overall, not even just during this pandemic that's going on. But right now, yeah, I would look at cutting spending because I don't want to raise taxes on us because people are already facing a big enough burden already with the economy. So therefore, we have to kind of balance out, see where we can make some cuts to try to balance the budget. But ultimately, we got to look at ensuring that we have to balance the budget because it's actually required that we have to, of course. So therefore, yeah, we'll have to look at whether taxes should be increased or cut spending in certain areas. But ultimately, I don't want to raise taxes at all. I'd hope that we can find areas where, our fiscal responsibility has been lacking and see if we can cut down on that, see what kind of areas don't need as much money because money's not always an answer in some areas. So therefore, maybe we can make some cuts there. But ultimately, yeah, I don't want to raise taxes at all. So,
okay, and just a follow-up question. When you say no tax increase, would that also apply to the gas tax, which hasn't been raised in more than 10 years, that 30.9 cents per gallon?
The gas tax, I don't think we need to increase. I mean, I've been looking at the audit reports from I think it was 2015, the transportation audit report.
Yeah.
Where, they show a whole bunch of projects that they were planned to be 33 million and they ultimately ended up being 150 million. And if we can just cut down on that, then I don't think we'll have to raise our gas tax. But we have to look at that first.
Okay. Where do you stand on the issue of medical and recreational marijuana?
When I was asked at the candidate forum in Ripon, I simply said that I'm strongly against, of course, recreational marijuana, of course.
Okay.
I don't want that in our streets. I've seen I could call them friends now, but maybe less so. But I've seen people around me, whether I've been at Ripon College or in the community, where they've just destroyed their life by getting into drugs and ultimately has led to other drugs. In terms of medical marijuana, I don't want to cancel it out and not say that's a possibility, but I also am hesitant on going towards that route. So I just want to, balance, get all the facts, meet with the right people. But ultimately, yeah, when it comes down to medical, it's a little bit different than, of course, recreational.
Okay. Americans know a lot more about how some police officers treat those in custody than we did 2 months ago. The governor has called for a new set of standards, statewide standards in how police treat those in custody. It would ban chokeholds, eliminate no-knock warrants, keep a database of officers who may be prone to use violence. What's your position on those issues, please?
Yeah, I think what we have found, especially due to the everything that's happened to George Floyd and just other matters around the country now, that we need to do some sort of this common sense reform. And as you were talking about some like that database for violent police officers, that one I know I believe Congressman Jim Sensenbrenner was on for trying to propose in Congress too. And I think it is a step forward on what we should do, because if you can have this record of officers that have had this bad behavior, it also plays with their character and judging future behaviors, and also maybe looking at past behaviors. And then also, looking at like banning chokeholds. Of course, we have to look more in detail, but I think discussion issues like that is very important. I think eliminating that chokehold would be necessarily necessary, but of course, if you get into certain situations where the officer is fighting for his own life, then it's different, of course. But like in custody, that's stuff that's really not recommended. And then what was the other one you mentioned?
Well, no-knock warrants is part of the governor's proposal.
Yeah, I think that one can certainly be explored too. I know that was the case down in, was it Georgia, that had that no-knock warrant where someone
where the woman was killed in her bed. Yes.
Yeah. So of course, like that,
Breonna Taylor, I think was her name. Breonna Taylor. Yeah.
Yep. And those circumstances should have never happened. And therefore we need to look at how we can adjust that. I don't know if it's exactly completely get rid of no-knock warrants or making sort of special, provisions for it, but definitely has to be explored.
Okay. There's a debate. Who should draw the next set of congressional, Senate, and Assembly lines? The Constitution says the party in power in the Capitol. The governor wants a People's Commission to draw it and then recommend it to lawmakers. What's your position on that?
Yeah, I was also asked that at the candidate forum too, and when they asked the question, they're like, "How do you think these lines should be drawn? Should they be drawn by a nonpartisan agency, etc.?" And then I joked and said, "I can't believe there's anything nonpartisan these days because we're in such a partisan climate right now."
Yeah,
but it is certainly something that just overall, I don't know if some sort of separate group should be doing it. But ultimately, I just want the districts to make sense. Like for my area, of course, I mean, it makes sense for about the counties that it includes, but then all of a sudden it includes like a tail in the Wisconsin Dells, just out of nowhere, the Dells on Lake Dowling. So when I'm telling people over in Ripon and Berlin and Green Lake that they're like, "Oh, how far does your district go?" I'm like, "Oh, Green Lake, Marquette, Adams County." And then it goes down the Wisconsin River to Lake Dowling and stuff. They're like, "Really, you got to go that far?" I'm like, "Yeah, but that's because this, of course, is a less populated area. But there's other districts where, the lines might not make quite as sense." So basically, I just wanted to be decided based on, the demographics of the people, maybe whether it's based maybe on income, education, based on school districts and maybe certain municipalities, just trying to integrate all those together and then draw on the lines. And I think we just stay to those core standards, the lines of district would be drawn a lot better. So of course, myself, I do not want to push any like partisan, like, "Oh, we got this Democrat over here, and if we take this little section in the city, we can flip the seat." I don't think that's going to be productive for us because right now people don't really care about that. They just care about the real issues and where we can actually solve problems, but yet we still have yet to address them. So ultimately, I want to be open to what we can do, but I just want the line system to make sense.
Okay. You don't want to raise state taxes, but property taxes, as you're well aware, is a big issue in Wisconsin. The need to control property taxes, because ours are some of the highest in the nation, is why school districts and local governments have their property tax levies capped. Referendums, although, as you know, can exceed them. If you're in the assembly, would you vote to keep these property tax caps or get rid of them?
Yeah, I think certainly the caps are important because it kind of puts a little bit of a restriction on raising our taxes. But also we need to look at considering like maybe inflation. So maybe we can look at how that cap can fluctuate based on the inflation level. And if we can make that decision and rule on that, then we can maybe look at how that levy will change based on certain areas. But ultimately, yeah, of course in the Berlin area, our tax levy is going to be different than maybe in the Milwaukee area, because it's on how much we need for our schools and stuff compared to them. So therefore, yeah, we have to maybe look at how the inflation rate can change. But ultimately, just speaking, because you mentioned the education part, I think we just need to reevaluate our funding for the all school programs. I mean, overall, I was talking to all the superintendents, and I have a whole bunch of statistics I could provide right now because I've been reading them today. And there's that Adams Friendship School District is going to be making shortfalls in 2, 3, and 4 years to an amount that they will not be able to recover from, right, as well as in other areas such as Montello and Westfield. So how do we address that? And I think you just have to reevaluate their funding formula, which has significantly hurt smaller public schools. And of course, in this area, that's all we have is small public schools. We don't have a lot of private schools over in the Madison or Milwaukee areas, or even up in the Fox Valley.
Right. You mentioned redoing the school aid formula, but let me ask you about the funding for local units of government, the villages, towns, and cities. They rely more than other states on the property tax. Is it time to look at alternative sources of revenues for those local governments? For example, broadening the sales tax to now exempt products and services, the 5% state sales tax, or should local governments be able to levy the half-cent sales tax that counties cannot levy? So do local governments need all alternative revenue sources, Luke?
I think right now there's a lot of things we have to look at, of course, that you've been mentioning. In terms of alternative revenue sources, I think that answer of using the sales tax isn't a necessary answer on my part. Okay. I think we can raise the revenue by trying to increase certain infrastructures in other areas. So therefore, one of my other proposals is focusing on the environment, how you can expand, clean and innovative energy into these areas. And therefore, that will boost revenue in those areas. But we have to get it there first. And how can the state, such as me working in the state assembly, how can I help local municipalities and farmers get some of those fixed revenues that they can receive, which ultimately could help fund more dollars into the cities and local municipalities. So therefore, yeah, looking at the sales tax, I'm not quite sure. I'd have to look more at it and how it would affect certain municipalities in my area. But ultimately, I'm trying to increase more revenue. And I think I want to push more towards the environment area where we can provide these fixed income for such farmers or small businesses by, solar panels, because now they're more efficient to use and cheaper than, 5-10 years ago. Windmills could potentially be used, but it's not really big in this area. But solar panels is definitely one that we can look at, as well as even maybe some micro dams that we can just put in that can provide some boost to our economy. But ultimately, back to the sales tax, I'm not quite sure. I'd have to look more into it, each municipality, and make sure it doesn't hurt my district.
Okay, a couple questions on the pandemic. It's hit the economy hard, and the healthcare providers the state relies on especially hard. Recessions cause less revenue for the state, as we've talked about, but more demands on safety net programs like Medicaid. If you're in the assembly voting on the next state budget, should hospitals have a greater priority in the next state budget based on what we've seen, how they're on the front lines dealing with the pandemic?
Well, certainly we have to look at how we can ensure that hospitals have the necessary resources. But also, there's going to be a whole bunch of priorities we're going to have to look in the next budget, not even just hospitals. And also, if we have to look at all the shortfalls that might be happening, how would we be able to support hospitals and also not raise taxes and not make as significant cuts in other areas that may need it. So therefore, we have to try to, we have to find that golden mean or balance. And that's what I want to work towards, is trying to find that balance by working with everyone in every sector, not just working with one sector, whether it's not just working with the small businesses against the farmers, but working together with them and working with the local hospitals. Because, I have two older brothers, well, one's pharmacy, one's PA, and they've been working in the healthcare field. My oldest brother's wife works they both work actually at the UW hospital. Mm-hmm. So they've been seeing firsthand what's been going on. And certainly they would say that we definitely need look at how we can provide more resources to our hospitals. So definitely we have to look at that. I'm not quite sure how exactly we would have to go about that, because we also want to make sure that we balance our budget.
Okay. And a follow-up question on the pandemic: should businesses that follow all prescribed health and safety practices and recommendations be legally immune from frivolous lawsuits?
Yeah, in terms of like immune from it, I mean, that's maybe, I don't know, too far in a way. We don't want to like cut like all ties based off it, because there's certain instances and you have to look at certain provisions. But yeah, I mean, if we're recommending and they're following certain guidelines that are being recommended by our governments, that this is what they should do and this is the standards that they must follow, and then ultimately something happens where they could be liable, I don't think that maybe they should be held liable, of course, but I mean, there's also that the private business is a private entity, so you have to look at the interaction between the consumer that was there, who might have either retracted COVID or whatever else. And so certainly, I don't know about immunity for it, but definitely maybe something to look at if they are following those guidelines.
Okay.
Because we don't want to subject them to these guidelines where their business is probably hurting, and then someone goes in there and somehow retracts COVID or something like that, and all of a sudden they're facing a whole bunch of lawsuits. We don't need that, especially for the small businesses in the area.
Should a new subject involving local governments: should bidding standards and requirements should they give preferences to Wisconsin companies when a local government wants to do or authorizes a major public works project? The reason I ask is a study found that in 2015, out-of-state contractors were awarded $72 million in contracts, but that doubled to $146 million in 2018. Should there be a preference for Wisconsin companies?
Oh, I think 100% there should be.
Okay.
Yeah, and I think you're referencing something I was just reading yesterday, because I was looking at that, and yeah, it's we want to get our roads fixed, right, at the best cost we can, but also we want to support our local businesses. I mean, when we put money into local businesses or into local governments, I mean, ultimately a lot of the money returns back to the people and it circulates and boosts our economy. So if we're sending a whole bunch of money out of state, it's not going to help our economy at all. I mean, maybe a little bit from whether they're buying from certain suppliers, yada. But I mean, we have to ensure that Wisconsin businesses are protected first, and once we can get over that hole and fix that, and ensure that all the roads can be fixed, because I mean, only like 35-40% of the roads in Wisconsin are in good condition, then we can finally look at making sure that Wisconsin has businesses that can supporting our roads, and so we don't send money out of state. So yeah, definitely I would 100% agree that we need to focus on giving contracts to Wisconsin businesses for roads or public work projects.
Okay, two final questions. One of them, when I read about your campaign online, you stress the need to help the rural economy. So I guess the biggest thing you'd push for to help the rural economy if you're elected to the assembly is what?
Oh, geez. One biggest thing, I don't know if I can really talk about one thing, but I mean, yeah, well, ultimately, I mean, when I talked first off with the whole district is just a rural area. We're a rural district. Our largest city is the city of Ripon, which I believe is just over like 7,000 people. And the next is Berlin, which is about just over 5,000. And the rest is probably under 3 for cities. So we are a rural community, and we all support each other, and the community always comes out to support each other. And I mean, our farm industry brings in a whole bunch of revenue that returns back to our counties. So ultimately, when I meet with the farmers, they're like, oh, we don't really need anything like for us. That's when I was meeting with one of the presidents of the local farm bureaus. It's like, we don't really need you to do anything for us. We just don't want you to do anything against us.
I see.
And so that's one thing, especially for the farm communities. In terms of small businesses, a lot of them are just tired that they just don't get represented how they want to be in the state assembly, and like no one listens to them. So first, you just gotta listen to them first. I mean, that's my biggest thing. So if I said at the forum, I mean, I might not be an expert right on every issue. I don't think anybody is, but I can be an expert on listening to you and listening to your concerns. And if I can listen to your concerns and put into action what you're looking for, I think we'll be a much better district. So therefore, yeah, when you talk about maybe one issue, I guess I can come down to in the long term, because short term is a little bit different, but in the long term, I think ensuring that our schools have necessary resources will be a huge investment into our communities. I mean, our schools in this area are just lacking behind. I mean, poverty rate in Adams Friendship area is like 70%. Here in Berlin, it's about 51. Other areas, it's like Montello, it's about 50%. So, and then our overall scores for those areas they're just meeting expectations or just below expectations. None are significantly exceeding them or exceeds expectations by a significant amount. So therefore, we can focus on how we can support our schools, and the schools ultimately will support our communities, because ultimately I want to keep people in this area. That's where I think it comes down to.
Okay.
And if we can focus on bringing students back here after they graduate from high school or college and contribute and, get a job at a local business. I mean, we have a whole bunch of local businesses in this area that need a lot of young talent that want to work in this area and then want to start a family in this area. And if we can focus on that, we'll be a much better area.
Okay. And then one final question, although we're almost out of time, so I need a quick answer.
Sure.
Why are you the most qualified of everybody running in the 41st?
I mean, I'm not closed-minded on my thoughts. I mean, I want to listen to people. I have my conservative and Republican values that I believe in. And I mean, but I also want to do what's right. I want to have common sense, and I want to listen to everyone in the district. If I can, fight for every family in this area to make sure that they have a better future, and I can bring people back into this area so they don't keep leaving, that's the candidate I'm going to be. And I'm going to always listen. I want to put term limits, especially on Congress. People are tired of that. And out of all the candidates here, I'm the one that's the most conservative with the most common sense attitude that wants to support families, but also support term limits. The other strong conservatives do not want to support term limits in this race. And I'm the only one that checks all those boxes. So therefore, that's why I'm the candidate.
Thank you. Luke Dretske of Berlin is a Republican candidate in the 41st Assembly District. The primary is August 11. Luke, thank you for talking to WisconsinEye.
Well, thank you for having me.
Thank you very much.
Campaign 2020 is sponsored by Wisconsin Hospital Association, Quick Trip, Wisconsin Counties Association, Wisconsin Realtors Association, and Wisconsin Operating Engineers Local 139.